Welcome to Visions Beyond. Today we're doing a deep dive on hypertension.
Oh yeah, hypertension.
That's right. We'll be taking a look at some excerpts from the CDC, the NIH, the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic,
And the Mayo Clinic.
yeah, and even the World Health Organization.
Wow, the WHO. Quite the lineup.
We're on a mission today to uncover the mysteries behind this sneaky condition that impacts millions of people worldwide. We'll be talking about why it's called the silent killer.
Silent but deadly.
And we'll also try to figure out what you can do to keep your blood pressure in check. But first, what exactly is blood pressure?
Well, blood pressure is basically the force of your blood pushing against the walls of your arteries. It goes up and down throughout the day naturally.
Oh, sure.
But when it's consistently high, that's when we're talking about hypertension.
So how do we know if our blood pressure's too high?
You got to get it measured.
That's right.
No guesswork.
No amount of tea leaf reading is going to
Or palm reading.
tell us what our blood pressure is. We need to use a blood pressure cuff.
You got it.
Okay, so when we get that reading, there are two numbers, the systolic and the diastolic. Can you explain what those are?
The systolic pressure, that's the top number. That measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart beats.
Okay.
And then the diastolic pressure, which is the bottom number, that's the pressure when your heart is resting between beats.
It's kind of like a dance, huh?
It is. It's a constant push and pull.
So what numbers should we be aiming for in this dance?
Ideally, you want to be around 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. That's kind of your target.
Right, 120 over 80, got it.
And anything at or above 130 over 80 is generally considered high, at least according to the CDC.
Now, we called hypertension the silent killer. Why is it called that?
Because it often doesn't have any noticeable symptoms, but it can be silently damaging your arteries and organs like a thief in the night.
Oh, I see.
It's kind of scary to think about.
It is. So even if you feel fine, it could be doing damage.
It could be. Imagine that constant pressure just wearing down your blood vessels, making them stiff and less flexible. The Cleveland Clinic really emphasizes this point.
And that damage to the blood vessels can have serious consequences,
Oh yeah, definitely.
like heart attacks and strokes.
Exactly. A heart attack happens when a hardened artery in your heart gets blocked, cutting off blood flow.
Oh, wow.
In a stroke, that's when the blood vessels in the brain either burst or get clogged, which deprives the brain cells of oxygen.
And the Mayo Clinic actually describes hardened arteries as ticking time bombs.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, definitely not something to ignore. And it's not just the heart and brain at risk, right?
Right. High blood pressure can damage your kidneys, your vision can be impacted, and it can even contribute to dementia.
Wow. It really is a multi-system threat.
It is. It's silently impacting different parts of your body.
So we're getting a sense of how serious this silent killer can be, but what causes it in the first place?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Is it just bad luck, or are there things that we can control?
It's a little bit of both. There are two main types of hypertension, primary and secondary. Primary hypertension, which is also sometimes called essential hypertension, is the most common type. And the thing is, there's no single identifiable cause for this type.
So it's a bit of a medical mystery?
You could say that.
Yeah.
The Mayo Clinic says that it develops gradually over time, and it's likely a combination of factors like aging and lifestyle.
I see.
Things like your diet, how much you exercise, stress levels, those all play a role.
So even though there's no one single cause, it sounds like there are things we can do to influence our blood pressure.
Exactly, and that's where it gets empowering.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the coin, we have secondary hypertension, which is caused by an underlying medical condition or certain medications.
So in this case, we need to kind of play detective and find that root cause to address the high blood pressure.
That's right. The Cleveland Clinic lists a bunch of possible culprits, things like kidney disease, sleep apnea, and even some medications can cause it. And the Mayo Clinic adds adrenal gland tumors and thyroid problems to the list. Unlike primary hypertension, secondary hypertension, it tends to appear suddenly and with much higher readings.
So it's almost like primary hypertension is a slow burn, while secondary hypertension is like a sudden explosion.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Okay, so we've covered the two main types of hypertension. Is there any way to know if you're at risk before it even becomes a problem?
Well, unfortunately, hypertension often doesn't have any symptoms, especially in the early stages. You might not feel any different even if your blood pressure is going up.
Well, that's scary.
It is a little bit, but it doesn't mean we're totally in the dark. There are risk factors that can increase your chances of developing high blood pressure.
Okay, hit me with those risk factors.
Age is a big one. As we get older, our risk of developing hypertension goes up. Race is another factor, with Black people being more prone to developing it earlier in life.
So it's not just about getting older, there's a genetic component as well.
There is, yeah. Family history is another major risk factor.
Huh.
If your parents or siblings have high blood pressure, you're more likely to develop it too.
So basically, if high blood pressure runs in your family, you've really got to be proactive about those healthy habits.
You got it. And speaking of those healthy habits, let's not forget about lifestyle choices. Things like obesity, a lack of physical activity, smoking, drinking too much alcohol, a diet that's high in sodium and low in potassium. All of those things can significantly increase your risk of developing hypertension.
So it sounds like modern life is almost setting us up for high blood pressure with all those risk factors.
It's true, there's some truth to that, unfortunately. But the good news is that many of these risk factors are modifiable, meaning you have the power to change them.
Okay, so there is hope. But what about those risk factors that we can't change, like our age, our race, and our family history? What can we do about those?
That's where awareness comes in, and also being proactive about your healthcare. If you know that you have these non-modifiable risk factors, it's even more important to focus on those things you can control, like your lifestyle choices, and making sure you get regular blood pressure checks.
That's a great reminder for all of us. Before we move on, let me remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe to Visions Beyond. And please leave us a comment with any ideas you have for future videos and podcasts. We love to hear from you.
Yes, we do. Now, let's dive into the complications that can arise when hypertension is left unchecked. This is where things can get really serious.
Okay, time to face the music. Tell us about the potential domino effect of damage that can happen if high blood pressure goes untreated.
Well, we touched on it earlier, but it's worth repeating. High blood pressure damages your arteries and organs over time. Think of it like constant strain on your body's plumbing system, weakening the pipes and making them prone to leaks and bursts.
And our sources definitely don't sugarcoat the potential consequences. The Mayo Clinic uses some vivid imagery, like ticking time bombs and ballooning under pressure.
Those descriptions are pretty accurate. When those hardened arteries in your heart get blocked, it can lead to a heart attack.
Right.
And when the blood vessels in the brain are affected, the risk of stroke goes way up. There's also the danger of aneurysms, which are weakened blood vessels that bulge under pressure and can rupture, and that can be devastating.
Those are some immediate dangers. What about the long-term damage?
Well, that's when we see the effects on multiple systems. Things like kidney failure, vision loss, even dementia, those are all potential long-term consequences of uncontrolled hypertension.
It's pretty sobering to realize that something as seemingly simple as high blood pressure can have such a big impact on the body.
It's a good reminder that even though we can't always feel it, high blood pressure is serious and it needs our attention. The good news is that much of the damage is preventable with early detection, making lifestyle changes, and getting appropriate medical treatment.
So what can we do to prevent this damage? Let's talk about the steps we can take to keep our blood pressure in check.
All right, let's get into it. So let's talk about what we can do to keep our blood pressure in check.
I think a lot of people are probably wondering about medication.
Yeah, medication can definitely be a powerful tool for managing hypertension,
Okay,
but you should always talk to your doctor first.
absolutely.
It's crucial to have a doctor prescribe and monitor any medication you take.
Right. Never self-medicate.
Exactly.
So it's a team effort between you and your doctor
Absolutely.
to create the best treatment plan.
You got it. So can you give us a rundown of the different types of medications that are commonly used for high blood pressure?
Sure. We mentioned a few of them last time. ACE inhibitors, ARBs, calcium channel blockers, and diuretics. Those are often the first ones a doctor might try.
They're considered first-line medications.
So let's break those down a bit. What do ACE inhibitors actually do?
ACE inhibitors, they usually end in PRO, work by blocking the formation of a chemical called angiotensin II.
Okay.
Angiotensin II makes your blood vessels narrow. ACE inhibitors stop it from being produced, which helps relax the blood vessels and lower your blood pressure.
So they kind of take the pressure off those blood vessels.
Exactly. Now, ARBs, they usually end in sartan, work in a similar way,
Okay.
but they target a different part of the process.
I see.
They block the action of angiotensin II, preventing it from attaching to receptors in the blood vessels.
So they're like bodyguards,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
protecting the blood vessels.
That's right. And both ACE inhibitors and ARBs, they're really effective at lowering blood pressure, and they also help protect the kidneys from damage caused by hypertension.
Oh, wow. Double duty.
Yep.
What about calcium channel blockers? How do those work?
Calcium channel blockers, they often end in pilodopaine. They regulate the role of calcium in blood vessel contraction. We all know calcium is good for strong bones,
Right.
but too much calcium entering the muscle cells of our blood vessels can make them tighten up, which leads to higher blood pressure.
So it's like those muscle cells are getting too excited,
That's one way to think about it.
and the calcium channel blockers calm them down.
Exactly. They prevent that excess calcium from getting into the muscle cells.
Gotcha. And then diuretics, those are the water pills.
That's right. Diuretics help your kidneys remove excess sodium and water from your body, and that comes out through urine.
So it's basically flushing out excess fluid.
Exactly. By reducing that fluid volume, diuretics help to lower blood pressure.
Makes sense. So those are the four main types: A2E inhibitors, ARBs, calcium channel blockers, and diuretics.
Those are the heavy hitters.
Are there any other types of medication that are sometimes used?
Yeah, there are a few others that doctors might use if those first-line medications aren't working well enough or if someone has certain medical conditions.
Oh, okay. Can you give us some examples?
There are alpha blockers.
Okay,
Those help relax certain muscles and keep small blood vessels open.
I see.
And then there are beta blockers, which work by slowing down your heart rate and reducing the force of each beat.
So they calm things down a bit.
Yep. And then finally, we have central acting agents.
Okay.
Those work in the brain to stop it from sending signals that would increase your heart rate or narrow your blood vessels.
Wow, it's amazing how many different approaches there are.
It really is.
It's like a whole arsenal against hypertension.
And the great thing is, doctors can really tailor the treatment to each person.
Right, using different combinations and dosages.
Exactly.
Now, I imagine all these medications must have potential side effects.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
So what should people keep in mind about that?
Like with any medication, blood pressure medications can have side effects. You always want to talk to your doctor about any potential side effects and let them know if you're experiencing anything unusual while you're taking the medication.
So it's important to stay in touch with your doctor and make sure the treatment is working.
Absolutely. And never stop taking your medication without talking to your doctor.
Yeah, that's important.
Suddenly stopping certain blood pressure medications can actually be dangerous and could cause a spike in your blood pressure.
Okay, so no going rogue and quitting your meds.
Definitely not.
So we've talked about different types of medications, how they work, and the importance of working with your doctor. What else should we know about taking blood pressure medication?
Well, you've got to be consistent.
Consistent.
It's really important to take your medication exactly as prescribed, even if you're feeling great.
Even if you feel good.
Even if you feel good. Remember, hypertension often doesn't have symptoms. You might not feel the effects of high blood pressure, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
So even if you wake up feeling like $1,000,000.
Exactly. You've got to stick to that routine.
Okay, what else?
Lifestyle changes are still super important,
Oh, really?
even when you're on medication.
So it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Nope, not at all.
You can't just start eating whatever you want just because you're taking a pill.
Exactly. You still need to eat a healthy diet, exercise regularly, maintain a healthy weight, manage stress, all those things. They all help make your medication more effective and reduce your risk of complications.
So it's like a 1-2 punch.
That's right.
Medication and lifestyle changes.
Working together.
Now, you mentioned something called resistant hypertension.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
Resistant hypertension, that's when your blood pressure stays high, even though you're taking at least 3 different medications, and one of them has to be a diuretic.
So even with a triple threat, the blood pressure just won't budge.
It can be tricky, yeah. It can be frustrating for patients and doctors, but it's important to remember that it doesn't mean your blood pressure will never come down.
Okay, so there's still hope.
There is. It just means that finding the right treatment plan might take a bit more work.
I see.
Sometimes it's just a matter of adjusting your medications, or maybe there's an underlying condition that's interfering with the blood pressure control.
So it becomes a bit of a detective game,
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
figuring out what's causing the resistance.
Exactly. It's important to work with your doctor to figure out what's going on.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about managing hypertension with medication. We've covered different types, how they work, the importance of lifestyle changes, and resistant hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else about medication that we should discuss?
Well, we've talked a lot about medication, but you're right, we can't forget about those lifestyle changes.
Right, they play such a big role.
Huge, whether you're on medication or not.
Okay, so let's imagine someone's listening right now, taking it all in, and they're thinking, okay, I get it, hypertension's serious. What's the first thing I should do?
You got to know your numbers.
Know your numbers.
Get your blood pressure checked regularly, and if it's high, don't ignore it.
Take action.
Take action.
It sounds so simple, But so many people avoid those checkups.
I know they're afraid of what they might find.
Exactly.
But the truth is, the longer you wait, the more damage can be done.
Right.
Early detection and early intervention, those are key.
So knowledge is power, but action is essential.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and you're not alone in this.
Oh, absolutely not.
Your doctor is there to help guide you, answer your questions, work with you to come up with a plan.
And there's so many resources available, too.
Tons.
Online communities, support groups, the American Heart Association, the CDC, the NIH.
All kinds of great information out there.
So many people are on this journey.
That's right.
Don't be afraid to connect with others.
Exactly. And remember, even small changes can make a difference.
That's so important for people to hear.
You don't have to completely overhaul your life overnight.
Right.
Start with a few healthy habits. Maybe swap out that soda for water, take a walk at lunch, or find some healthy ways to manage your stress.
Small steps, big impact.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've really explored the depths of hypertension in this deep dive.
I think so. We covered the causes, the symptoms, the dangers, and all sorts of treatment options.
Lifestyle changes, medication, even resistant hypertension.
We covered it all, and it's important to remember that even though it's a serious condition, it's manageable.
With the right approach.
Exactly. Knowledge, action, and working with your doctor.
Those are the keys to success.
They are.
Well, before we sign off, let me remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe to Visions Beyond.
Yes, please do.
And leave us a comment with your ideas for future deep dives.
We love hearing from you.
We do. Until next time. Remember, knowing your blood pressure is the first step to controlling it. Take action today for a healthier tomorrow.